Welcome, everyone, to our January open house for Career Strategy Lab, open house slash QA about the UX job search. Why do we do these? Well, number one, there is a lot of doom and gloom on LinkedIn. And frankly, I'm so sick of seeing it. And yeah, the job market is tough. And at the same time, people are getting hired. And I think sometimes the doom and gloom kind of gets elevated on social media and in our circles. And so we do these open houses to share the stories of people who've recently got hired and or who are in the middle of a job search so that you can hear some positive stories, hopefully some encouraging and uplifting stories from these people, and a chance to kind of see and hear behind the scenes of what goes on in Career Strategy Lab, our 3-month UX job search accelerator, and have a chance to ask our team questions, ask other people questions who've been a part of Career Strategy Lab. So what we have lined up for today, we have Sarah. So that's our game plan. And I'm going to pull up my notes here because we have a lot to cover and I want to keep myself on track because sometimes I go on tangents. So let's do that.
Hi, everyone. Sarah Page. I'm based right outside of Madison, Wisconsin. It's freezing. I have a hat on.
It's cold here too.
just go with it. Yeah, I have been meandering between marketing design, brand design, product design my whole career. And I was really struggling when I got laid off last of my portfolio on my website being the jobs and the work that I had, but not what I wanted to be doing. And then I was really struggling with getting around that. So when I joined Career Strategy Lab, don't even know, Becca might know, I think it was last year, I really got some focus onto what I was looking for and helped narrow down on get my mindset right and really narrow in on what jobs I was looking for. And that actually helped me in my, what do you call it, Sarah? You're like, when you're targeting companies, I was like, I only want to be in health tech or climate tech. And I didn't use LinkedIn, but I did use like niche Slack communities to find those and target those types of listings. So I was hired for senior UX designer, which the label is whatever to me. I really just wanted to do impactful work. And we are building a diabetes lifestyle management app from the ground up. And so that's super exciting to me. It's exactly what I was looking for, the impact that I could make. And the biggest takeaway for me was that my hiring manager called out how my portfolio told the story that he was looking for because it was in Figma slides and not an ever scrolling website. So biggest takeaway for me is on the portfolio.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think your story is such a great example of, again, companies that need UX help outside of big tech and like med tech, et cetera. So big in my opinion. And yeah, that point about your portfolio, you can find arguments for various types of portfolios all over the internet, and the trolls will come out on LinkedIn every time I give my opinion. But we keep doing what's helping people get hired. And it's these portfolio presentations that tell a story that are easy to consume because they've considered the user of the portfolio. So yeah, we're excited to hear more about your story.
My story is a little bit different. So I was laid off as a creative director in 2023 in December. And right away I joined because I was like, I've been watching the job market. I cannot do this by myself. There's no way. And so the first thing for me, other than the mindset, was the resume. And I worked with Becca and I was like, it's too long. It's too long. There's so much here. But it's like almost a 20-year career. And I was really struggling with how do I connect all of this? Well, I was doing like print design and this was like websites, but I want to be in product. How do I make it make sense? And that was a big unlock for me that it didn't need to make sense for everyone, but it needed to make sense for the right person seeing it because of the amount of people in the market. Like it just needs to touch one person. And that person in the role that I got hired for was looking for a visual designer who knew UX. And so that was like, ooh, I got to target these specific things. And the resume really helped me get there. And admittedly, I didn't do all of the other steps in a row, but I took all the information and just stored it, because in the middle of Career Strategy Lab, I decided that I wanted to start a product design focused freelance business. I had already always had freelance, but I really wanted to target these clients to kind of build up my portfolio. And through my network in like random email channels and random Slack channels, I landed one project and then a pro bono project that I used to build my portfolio. So I stopped in the middle to kind of just then UX my way through building the portfolio. And then when I had a long-term contract, thankfully, and once I knew that that was expiring at the end of this year, around September is when I found out that it was ending. So I was like, oh shoot, I really got to go hard now. And that's when I really started on my portfolio. And I started with just 2 case studies, of which I had just done those projects. So they were really fresh and they were directly what I wanted to do. So that was super helpful because I could talk to them and be proud of them and not be like, yeah, I did this, but I don't want to be doing that. But what I noticed most, other than the portfolio and the resume, was that because I have this extensive background, I was getting responses that I was overqualified and underqualified for the exact same job description, the exact same role, from regular product designer level 1 junior to principal designer. It was the same response. You're too qualified. You're underqualified. You can't do this. And it wasn't until I was able to let that go and say, the right person is out there. I got a little bit practice over and over and over again, and thrown some loops and interview cycles, because they say they want a behavioral interview and then they're like, okay, show me some work. And you're like, wait, what? I thought we were just gonna talk over and over and over again. That I was like, whatever comes up, I'm gonna be ready, because I can do this presentation like back of my hand. I can talk to people. It's gonna be fine. So it was really like having the conversation with myself of just letting whatever was going to happen, that I was able to keep landing interviews and just go with it. And it was really funny because the job that I got hired for, they asked me no questions. They asked me no portfolio review. It was just have a conversation with 3 different people. They were just vibe checking. I was like, I'm here for this. This is what I want, because they had already vetted the resume and they had already vetted the portfolio. And then it was just like, do we vibe? So I got really lucky and can realize that. But getting through all those other steps in my head was a big unlock that I wouldn't have had without CSL.
Sarah, thanks for sharing that. And now I have a quick follow-up question. So this interview process of the 3 interviews and never formally presenting your portfolio or talking through a project or anything, do you know, or do you have a hunch, or did you receive feedback that because of the quality of your resume and your portfolio, they kind of spoke for themselves and sold you, quote unquote, so that the interviews just truly were conversations? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that was the case, because the person who's the head of design technically it's still in the tool, is still a designer. So was able to pick up on my skill set without having those other being talked to. It's also much more his way. He really wanted me to meet the team, but I didn't do that. I talked to a recruiter, which had no information. I talked to the hiring manager, his supervisor, which was up in level instead of, I thought I was meeting with the team, and then the head of people. And that was it. And so I was like, what? What's going on here? It was really strange. The other times it was more interview loops, and I was getting passed on very quickly from the recruiter, from the hiring manager, to the other people on the team. And I think for the same reason, that the materials I had were speaking for themselves, and they really just wanted to find that one person that they were looking for. And when I didn't get passed on, it was for very specific reasons that I asked, like, oh, this said designer researchers, but we really wanted a researcher. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do that, so thank you. That's not where my passion is. But that you could have been very clear up front, that's what you're looking for, but you have to jump through the hoops. But I do agree with you that because my materials were at the level they were, that this hiring manager was like, I don't need to see any more. Let's just make sure that there's a good cultural fit.
Thanks for sharing that. Also, because I think this kind of mindset that you had of just letting go of outcomes in the job search, let's say, meaning like you were unqualified for one role, but overqualified for the other role that had the same job description and job title. And I think it's just such an important reminder for everyone that despite a job description being written, all of this is out of your control. And if you don't lock in this mindset, you're going to have such a heavy feeling and be so sidelined with your confidence, with your mental health. And it's just so, so important to remember that you don't know why it's a yes or it's a no. And you just have to keep going. And like Sarah said, believe that it only takes one yes and that company is out there. And is it going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. But Sarah's story is such a great example of this. All right. I kind of want to switch gears here because I know there's some questions. A couple of people privately DM'd me here. Let's get into the kind of the nitty gritty of like your new roles. And you, of course, don't have to tell us your exact salary, but we're curious, two things really to hear about your roles. Number one, really, are they remote or in person? And did you try and negotiate that offer? And what happened? So let's just hear a little bit more about the details of that role. And then if you tried to negotiate, maybe what tips do you have for people?
My current role is 100% remote. They call it home first. I think it's because it's health tech. They would prefer you to not be at a coffee shop. So that it's home first, which is fine for me. And as I was listening to the recruiter and the hiring manager, and then I guess VP on the experience side, I was collecting information along the way. Of course, the recruiter asked me first flat out, especially without getting any information for them, what's your number? And I was like, I don't really care. Like I want a job more than I want the number. I'm lucky in that way and privileged that I live in a place that doesn't have a super high cost of living. And so the benefits to have those for health insurance and stuff was high outweighed what the salary was. And obviously I want to be compensated for my worth, but it did not bubble up to the top thing. You know, what I was doing, is there benefits, culture was more important to me than the salary. So as I'm having these conversations, I'm gathering information that there are two junior designers on the team, and especially the hiring manager at least 3 times said that I've noticed that you've led a team before. Like, are you interested in doing that? And I would be like, we can talk about it. Super vague of leaving the conversation open. I'm like, yeah. Oh. So then when it came to the offer, the recruiter asked again what my salary expectations are. And so I knew what their number was. And now learning that they wanted a more senior position, I took the end of their number and made that the bottom of my number and then went up from there. And they went in the middle with a potential bonus and equity. I didn't negotiate from there because I knew that number was already higher than what I had told them the first time that I was looking for. And like I said, it wasn't that much importance to me because of all of the other things. But if it were lower, you never know what to expect. If it were much lower, I would have negotiated to get at least what I was making in my last role, which was the number I was starting from. And they met me there. So I was happy about that. But technically, I didn't negotiate, but it was like around the way negotiating.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think just hearing again that thought that went into the whole offer and not just how many zeros are on the salary is so important, because so many people get so fixated on like the exact dollar or the salary, right? And you think, well, wait a second, if I add up the healthcare and this and that, and I can stay in my same house and I don't have to move, and the cost of living is low where I live, and the salary meets my needs, and the role gives me experience XYZ that sets me up to be in a better position to apply some different role 5 years from now. Like all of that is often just so lost for so many people. And so I think hearing that will help a lot of people just think through that a little bit more clearly when they get offers. All right. Our last question that I want to wrap up with is really around what would you say to someone who's considering joining Career Strategy Lab? And we could also sprinkle in if you have any advice for them. So maybe if they're on the fence.
Yes, I was looking at the ROI on the program to where, like, okay, when I land a role, what will the difference in my salary be? Does that pay for the program? Obviously, I was taking a leap of faith, but using specific language like when, not if, I was like, yeah, this I can make up for this, and the learnings that I will get are going to be just kind of like frosting on that cake. I also, bigger than that, was definitely the community, like just sending your materials out into the ether and having no idea if anyone's looking at it and having those eyes of like, these people have been in the industry, they know what works, they know what doesn't work, and just having somebody that you know, Becca looked at this with their own eyes and is a human and says, yes, this is good. To have the like, oh my gosh, I'm not just invisible and somebody is helping me, was just that extra human touch that was super gratifying, to be like, someone's finally paying attention. And yes, Becca can't give me a job, but at least I'm getting to that next step. But I think that my biggest advice and the biggest unlock for me along those lines was, social media isn't for me, and I wasn't going to pretend that it was for me. And so meeting people in real life, I went to a conference out in New York City in September and met people, designers in tech, and they were able to say, your portfolio is great, you're doing great work. And I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know how to react because no one had said that before. I was like, really, it is, that's amazing. So like, why can't I get anyone to respond? And them saying, it's not you, I would hire you if I had positions open, was that little unlock for me in my mindset that like, it just has to be the right time. All of these triggers are saying yes, it just needs to be that final one. And so that for me was a big difference when I started then to let go of everything I couldn't control and just focused on, yep, I can be prepared, I can do this, I can do that, but no one else knows what they're doing and I cannot control them. So I'm not even going to pretend. That was the biggest stuff for me.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I think the power of having other people validate what you're doing is so important, especially like job search and career and all this. It's often this topic that people feel weird talking about, or you don't want to ask for help with stuff because you're worried what people will think. And I think the community is just so powerful in creating this place where people who are in the trenches doing the same tasks and having the same goals like can come together and not be distracted by social media, right? If I could do it over again, I wouldn't be on social media, but the train has left the station for me. So I love that you're able to have like this community with CSL that isn't LinkedIn, and it's unlocked these opportunities to meet up with people in person, which is awesome that we can be doing that. So, all right, that wraps up this open house where I'm going to let Sarah go back to whatever you're doing for the rest of the day. I know everyone really appreciates you taking the time to share your stories. So thank you so much. Thank you for spending your afternoon or morning or evening, wherever you are. And we'll see you again sometime somewhere. Bye, everyone.